What if true strength doesn't look like what we've always been taught? We've been told that being strong means never wavering, always remaining in control, and asserting one's presence. Yet Carl Jung invites us to look elsewhere. Authentic strength is not found in the mask we wear, but in the courage to remove it. It is revealed in the ability to remain at peace in the face of storms, to stand tall even in vulnerability, to love ourselves without needing the approval of others. On this journey, we will explore what it truly means to be strong and mature within, not through the illusion of ego, but through encountering our deepest truth. If you've ever felt that the usual definition of strength doesn't fit you, then pay attention. What you're about to discover could change the way you see yourself and the world. 1. Redefine mental strength. Since the dawn of time, we have been taught a distorted idea of strength. Being strong, it was said, meant clenching your fists, never crying, walking straight with a stone face, as if vulnerability were a shameful weakness. This view has shaped entire generations who have exhausted themselves trying to hide their pain behind a mask of invincibility. Yet, if we listen to Jung's wisdom, this definition is nothing more than an illusion. True strength has nothing to do with rigidity. Rather, it is closer to inner flexibility, the ability to be true to oneself. Redefining mental strength means understanding that saying no can sometimes be the bravest act of our lives. It's not about building walls, but about creating doors, clear passages between what we choose to experience and what we refuse to endure. Boundaries aren't weapons against the world. They're guardians of our inner peace. They remind us that our time, energy, and balance are sacred and worth protecting. Society still glorifies those who sacrifice themselves for others, those who always say yes, even when their heart screams no. But in truth, this behavior ends up distancing us from our authentic selves. When we exhaust ourselves trying to meet everyone's expectations, we gradually lose touch with our own center. Jung called this self-abandonment, a trap that traps us in the role of others' shadow. True strength manifests when we stop seeking external validation. It awakens in those moments when we choose to remain true to ourselves, even if it disappoints or surprises those around us. It is found in the courage to accept being misunderstood, because inner truth is worth more than any approval. Being strong isn't about dominating others. It's about owning yourself. It's about walking through the world without a mask, knowing that some will judge, others will walk away, but those who remain will finally see our true colors. This strength doesn't seek to impress. It simply seeks to exist in righteousness. So, redefining mental strength is not about building a harder facade. It is about learning to inhabit one's being with authenticity, with clarity, and with a deep fidelity to what is alive within us. 2. Emotional independence. Imagine for a moment that every criticism, every sideways glance, every hurtful word is no longer a chain around your heart. For a long time, we believed that a person's worth was measured in the mirror of others' gaze. A compliment elevates us, a criticism crushes us. We then become slaves to these changing reflections, unable to walk without trying to guess whether we are accepted or rejected. But there comes a day when we tire of this game. It's that moment when, faced with an unfair remark, we no longer react with anger or sadness. We breathe, we observe, and we understand that what the other person is expressing speaks more about them than about us. Jung explained that everyone wears a mask, what he called the persona, shaped by wounds, fears, and personal history. When someone criticizes, scorns, or rejects, this mask is expressed, but it does not define our truth. Emotional independence begins exactly here, in the separation between what comes from others and what truly belongs to us. When we stop taking things personally, we discover an inner freedom of unsuspected power. We stop putting our peace in the hands of others. We no longer seek to please in order to feel that we exist, because we have recognized that our existence is already full and complete. This doesn't mean we become cold or indifferent. On the contrary, this independence makes us more human. It frees us from automatic reactivity and opens up a space for understanding. When someone acts harshly, we can see the wound behind their mask, not to excuse it, but to understand that it doesn't define who we are. This inner distance protects us without closing us off. It's a subtle sovereignty, the ability to choose which energies we allow into our inner space. This choice changes everything. Where once a word might haunt us for days, we discover that sometimes it's enough to just not welcome it. We become guardians of our own energy, and this calm vigilance is a form of profound maturity. Emotional independence, then, is not a barrier against the world, but a key to walking freely through it. It is learning to stay centered, regardless of the external turmoil. It is no longer confusing the voice of others with our own inner voice. 3. Responsibility and integration of the shadow. Taking responsibility for one's life is an act of inner greatness. It's a clear line between child and adult, between the one who suffers and the one who chooses. Too often, we lose ourselves in the need to point the finger at someone, family, society, circumstances. Yet, as long as we remain trapped in this reflex, we relinquish our power. Maturity begins when we say, "Yes, this is my share." Jung reminded us that human beings are inhabited by a shadow, that unconscious space where our fears, our anger, our repressed impulses accumulate. To ignore this shadow is to live halfway, but to integrate it is to transform it into strength. Every error, every fault, every fall then becomes a gateway to a broader understanding of oneself. It is no longer a shame, but a lesson. Recognizing one's mistakes isn't about putting oneself down. It's about freeing oneself from the burden of dissimulation. Saying "I was wrong" doesn't weaken, it frees oneself. By accepting responsibility, we take back ownership of what we projected outward. We stop pushing our dark areas onto others and instead look them in the face and say, "This is part of me, but it doesn't define me." True strength lies not in appearing perfect, but in becoming whole. And becoming whole requires embracing what is disturbing. Anger, jealousy, fear, all of these exist within us. By recognizing them, naming them, and taming them, we cease to be prisoners of them. We cease to be guided by the unconscious and begin to walk in awareness. But taking responsibility doesn't mean carrying everything. Maturity also involves discerning what belongs to us and what belongs to others. We are not responsible for the wounds they refuse to heal, nor for the stories they project onto us. Finding this balance is an art. It's walking the line between humility and lucidity, admitting our faults without absorbing those that aren't ours. To assume one's part is to rediscover one's power. Integrating the shadow is the path to wholeness, and it is in this wholeness that a rare wisdom is born, that of no longer fleeing what one is, but of inhabiting it with courage. 4. Authenticity versus expectations. Let's be honest for a moment. Our entire lives, we've been taught to play a role. Be the good child to be loved. Be the brilliant student to be recognized. Be the always available friend to avoid rejection. We grew up believing that love was earned, that we had to conform to be accepted. So we wore masks. We learned to hide our truths so as not to disturb. But there comes a time when this game becomes unbearable. You feel yourself suffocating under the weight of expectations. You realize you're being applauded for a role you never chose. And then the question arises, what is love worth if I have to deny who I am to get it? This is where authenticity begins. It doesn't come from a grand speech, but from a simple and courageous choice. To be true, even if it disturbs. To be yourself, even if it disappoints. Jung reminded us that living behind a mask deprives us of our essence. As long as we seek to please, we remain prisoners of a theater that has nothing to do with our truth. Authenticity requires courage, because it attracts both light and shadow. Some will move away because they preferred the version of you that suited them. Others will stay, and they will finally see the real you. The difference is immense, being loved for a mask or being loved for who you are. You know, being authentic isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it means being misunderstood. Sometimes it means losing connections. But what you gain in return is priceless. The peace of existing without lies. The peace of no longer constantly trying to prove that you deserve a place. And then there's this wonderful discovery. When you dare to be true, you attract people who vibrate at the same frequency. You no longer need to beg for approval. Those who stay with you aren't there for your performance, but for your truth. So, authenticity in the face of expectations is not a rebellion against the world. It is a return to oneself. It is refusing to live to correspond and choosing to live to be. 5. Become the author of your own life. There comes a time in life when we realize that we have long been playing a role in a play written by others. The words we spoke were not really our own. The gestures we repeated were dictated by inherited scripts, those of family, society, education, childhood wounds. We were actors in an unconscious script, obeying silent rules that prevented us from seeing who we really were. Carl Jung said that human suffering often finds its roots in these secret narratives that we repeat without questioning them. We relive the same relationships, the same conflicts, the same failures, because a part of us remains trapped by these old stories. But there comes a decisive moment, the one when we become aware of the role we play. This moment is a rupture, a door, an awakening. Because as soon as we see the script, we are no longer condemned to embody it. Becoming the author of your life means daring to pick up the pen again. It means agreeing to break out of your usual routine and write your own words. This requires a newfound clarity, observing your reactions, recognizing your patterns, and seeing the traps you always fall into. But it also means discovering an immense freedom, the freedom to choose a different response, to chart a different course. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. At first, the old role still beckons, like a reassuring habit. But gradually, each act of consciousness becomes a declaration. I am no longer a slave to this narrative. I choose my truth. This transformation can be unsettling for those around you because it shatters expectations, but it is unstoppable. Once you experience this freedom, there is no going back. Becoming the author of your life also means remembering who you were before the world told you who you should be. It means rediscovering that original essence, that inner flame that nothing can extinguish. It means understanding that the greatest victory is not to imitate external models, but to fully manifest your unique being. What if true maturity were not a destination, but this repeated choice? Each day, writing one's own words, walking one's own path, finally becoming oneself. True strength is not noisy. It does not seek to dominate. It expresses itself in inner silence, in assumed responsibility, in lived authenticity. Jung reminds us that spiritual maturity consists of becoming the author of one's own life, of ceasing to play imposed roles in order to rediscover the essence of who we really are. If these words resonate with you, don't let them go to waste. Choose to examine your limits, embrace your shadows, and dare to be true. Share this message with those around you, because everyone needs to remember that strength is not a facade, but a path of transformation. And above all, commit today to walking towards this inner freedom, because that is where the greatest victory of all begins. Victory over oneself.